Hey everybody, in today's episode, we're talking about relapsing. Have you yourself or somebody you know have relapsed and you wondered, how the hell did that even happen? Why did I do that? I know exactly what's going to happen every time I let booze touch my lips. We're talking about that. We actually read a little line out of the big book that sparks really good conversation, and it sheds a lot of light into why people end up picking up, even after multiple years of sobriety. It's a really interesting conversation. We talk about that, and we also have some conversations with a couple questions that we had in our Facebook group, the Sobriety Network. And so we bring up a couple questions on there. One of those is, why do people relapse while they're in treatment? You'd be surprised with this answer. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com, and ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Ben?
Yes, sir.
Trying something new today, Ben.
What are we trying, Tom?
You're going to read. I read something here in the big book, and I'd like us to do this a little bit more often.
Okay.
So I'm going to read a paragraph or a couple sentences out of the big book here that I read that I thought was rather interesting, and it could spark good conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and read that, and then let's dissect it, okay?
Right on. Oh, I'm excited to hear what
I
you
know.
picked.
This is Ben's love language. So here we are, page 37 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you want to follow along, it's on page 37. Get out those BBs. That's Big Book, right? Page 37, about halfway down the page, it says, in some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately, instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. Let me break this down real quick. I'm just going to buzz right through it again, okay? In some circumstances, we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like. So we get angry, we get depressed, we get, even if we're happy, whatever, it's an excuse to go out and drink. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of all of what always happens. Every time I pick up a drink, something bad happens. I've met, and I'm not reading right now, I've met people that drink 2, 3, 4 times a year that I would 100% classify as an alcoholic. Because every time they drink, something bad happens. They get arrested, they wreck a car, whatever the case is.
Once they start, they don't stop until they're stopped.
Exactly. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately instead of casually, there was little seriousness or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. Meaning, we don't put any, there's this saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, think it through. Play the tape, right? We don't do that. When we go and relapse, we don't think of what potentially could happen. We give very little thought to, oh shit, I might lose my family. Oh shit, I might get a DUI. Those sorts of things. And then as soon as alcohol touches the lips, game on.
Here's what I hear from that. Tom, I'm going to drink the poison and hope that you die. Right? Like when justified drinking is very scary. It's like you've just taken the brakes off, dude, and gotten in a race car, basically. You're like, screw this, I'm doing this. And this is why it's so important, like when we discuss like the underlying issue stuff. What is it? Anger, worries, resentment, fear. depression, etc., when you feel justified by those, that's why we work on those things through 12 steps in the treatment process with the therapist, whatever the case may be. If you're not addressing those quote unquote feelings, if you sit in that long enough, eventually we're going to go to the one thing that makes us feel better, and that's a drink or a drug. And to the consequences part, like I always ask our clients when they're on the fence about doing it again, I'm like, because sometimes they're open with us and they're like, yeah, I plan on drinking again. I want to try it just one more time, see if I could control it. I don't want to miss out on life. And I ask them, are you willing to pay the consequences, not knowing what the consequences could be? Meaning that there's consequences you haven't suffered yet, and are you willing for them to get worse? And most of the time, like it just hasn't even clicked that like things could get even worse than they were. They have this idea that, oh, somehow this will be better this time because now I'm aware. I got in enough trouble, and consequences do not keep us sober. I mean, you see people with multiple DUIs. Oh my God, I'll never drink again. People lose custody of their kids. I'll never drink again. I'll never drug again.
Yeah. What's interesting about this reading too, and I'll read this one sentence again. But even in this type of beginning, we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree meaning a relapse, whether that's a day, a week, a month, was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happens. And what I want to emphasize there, always happens. I can't tell you how many conversations I have had with people, and I'll ask them, well, because Ben and I, obviously, you guys know by this point, we're Rock Recovery Center, and, we deal with clients day in and day out. And some of our clients obviously relapse and they come back. And I will ask them all the time, how was it? How was the relapse? Was it worth it? 100% of the time, no. And then I say, what did you think was going to happen? And they would always say, I don't know. Or like what you said, I just wanted to see. We recently had somebody that said, I wanted to, how did he word it? I wanted to see if the obsession was still there.
That is the obsession.
And it's like, yeah, that is the obsession. The fact that you went there and you picked up the drink to see if the obsession was still there, that is the obsession.
The obsession precedes the first drink.
Right. Getting back to what this says always happens, alcoholics are, we're the smartest, but I also think we're the dumbest humans on the planet. We know what's going to happen. We've tried it time and time and time again. And I think there's a story somewhere in the book about somebody that walks across the street, gets hit by a car.
Oh, the jaywalker.
Yeah. Give me a synopsis of that.
Yeah, the jaywalker, and that is chapter 3, more about alcoholism. Actually, it's a chapter we're in, so let me just flip a couple pages. Oh, man. Uh-oh, Tom. See, you put me on the spot, and then I get nervous, and I can't find it.
It's going to be okay, Ben. I'm here.
What? Where am I?
Well, while you're doing this, let me just bring up one thing. If you haven't figured out by now, right now we have a Facebook support group that we want to invite you to. And a lot of the stuff that we've just covered in this reading is brought up in our support group. A lot of the people in there are in recovery. They have long-term sobriety. There's family members in there of people that struggle with alcoholism and addiction. It's on Facebook. It's called the Sobriety Network. I invite you to go there and join us because, it's myself, Ben Tambini. We're like the moderators. But honestly, a lot of good people in there. And Ben and I and Dr. Tambini, we have personal relationships with some of these people because they've entrusted their loved ones to come through treatment with us, and proud to say that a lot of them are celebrating years of sobriety. So it's at Facebook, the Sobriety Network.
You know what's funny, Tom?
What?
The reason I couldn't find it was literally the next paragraph.
Okay.
I was flipping the page away from it. I think this might actually be worth reading this whole thing. All 4 paragraphs of this. It's not too long, but for those that haven't read the big book through, this is literally alcoholism and drug addiction. Our behavior is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few years in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point, you would label him as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently, he's hit again, and this time has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks, he breaks both legs. On through the years, this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promise to be careful to keep off the streets altogether. Finally, he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce. He's held up to ridicule. He tries every no means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways. But the day he comes out, he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You'd think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? I'm glad we brought that up, because that is like a very famous little excerpt out of the big book that probably a lot of our listeners may have not heard before.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason it sticks out in my mind because, I'm not in the big book near as much as you, but I'll always remember that story. I didn't remember it in as much detail, but it's a good representation of what we put ourselves through.
And it's the reality of the situation, man. Like that, again, like I was talking about, those consequences over and over and over again. But I do want to say to like the people that are trying to get their loved one help, there's something that we didn't quite touch on when reading those previous paragraphs where it's like one of the sayings in AA is there's nothing worse than a belly full of booze and a head full of AA. In other words, you've been educated on this, yet you try it again. Once I had been through treatment and gone to meetings and I had an idea like, dude, I really should be sober. Like, that'd probably be the best thing for me. When I'm sitting at the bar, it ruins my drinking and drugging.
Yeah.
It, like, takes, I wouldn't say, yeah, it takes the fun out of it, dude. Because I'm sitting there like, what am I doing? Can I really do this? Here I am. How'd this happen again? What's going to happen this time? Everyone's going to be ashamed of me. I told everybody I was going to be sober, but now I'm not. There's more shame. And it just compiles, dude.
Yeah.
So my point is like, just because somebody went to treatment or went to a meeting or they've had sobriety time before, if they go back out, it doesn't mean that that time was wasted. Because now, hopefully, it's ruined their drinking and drugging. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's the saying, you'll never be able to drink the same.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never be able to use drugs the same way. So in a sense, once you decide to go into recovery, it's a commitment. It is, because you're not going to be able, it's the drugs and the booze is not going to do the same thing as it always has and what you're used to it doing. I was always used to going to the bar, having my 12, 15, 20 beers, my, basket of chicken wings, and just disconnecting from all of reality until it got to the point where it had a actual physical stronghold over me. And then obviously decided to do this whole recovery thing. Now, fortunately, in my position, I've never relapsed, quote unquote. But how do you go from what I was doing, drinking and drugging daily, to having 14 years of sobriety, to going back to drinking and it being like it was in old times?
Dude, I don't know the answer to that.
It sounds like a nightmare.
It's gotta be a nightmare.
So, and this is something that I think the people that don't understand addiction, that think that you can just will your way through it. You should just be able to will your way into sobriety. This is exactly a direct if you could just will your way into sobriety, nobody would relapse.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, I was shaken like a leaf. I was extremely malnourished. I was throwing up daily. The mental crap that was going on in my head, like I wouldn't wish that stuff on anybody. And knowing that if I chose to drink again, I would go back to that. Like, you can't will your way through that. You know what I mean? So I just say that to the people that are like, oh, I don't necessarily believe in addiction. Well, that's fine, but it's there. That's like the whole idea of addiction. For whatever reason, it pulls you back to it. So anything else on that, Ben? I wanted to bring up just a couple of things from the Facebook group.
No, that's a good little part in the big book that we covered for sure.
Yeah.
Don't. There's nothing that can justify me taking a drink or a drug again.
Yeah.
I would lose everything. It wouldn't be worth it. There's nothing, hopefully nothing on this face of this planet that could make me depressed enough or angry enough to go out and take a justified drink.
Right. Same here. All right. So on the Facebook group, the Sobriety Network, there was a post that was put out 6 days ago, and I wanted to bring up one of the comments that I think needs to be brought up. What's something you'd like to understand better about the recovery process? And this is from Elizabeth D. I won't use your last name for obvious reasons. She asked, why do people relapse when they're in treatment? Why substitute drug of choice for another while in treatment? Ben?
Ooh, my go-to answer on that is they have not gotten away from the idea that they need to be on something. Right. It's about getting outside of yourself. And that doesn't just have to be substances. Let me give you an example. Actually, I'll give you an example that we just saw recently that had a very, very heavy effect on a couple people in our community. We had two secretly get into a rehab romance, and they were both really into it. And then one backed out, realizing like, uh-oh, this ain't the person for me, and started seeing some things, wanted out completely, and the other person went off the deep end. Now, it's about getting outside of yourself. You take away, say my drug of choice was anything I could put in a needle, primarily heroin at the time. You take that away from me, my comfort is gone. Don't get me wrong, it brought me consequences, it brought me pain, it brought me all that. But when I didn't have a heroin problem until I ran out of heroin. When I was out of heroin, I was uncomfortable. When I had it, it was very comforting. So now you've taken it away forever. I'm all of a sudden uncomfortable. What can I do to get outside of myself? And a lot of times people will change to a substance that they don't believe that they had a problem with. Maybe it's something like kratom that is marketed as harmless, which people are very quickly finding out is not harmless. In fact, there's lawsuits coming out because they didn't label it as addictive, and people are ending up in detox all over the place for this stuff. But again, it goes to, what can I do to get outside of myself? What shopping is another one. You know, we'll see clients here, all of a sudden just Amazon boxes are piling up. And you're like, what in the world? And they have to be addressed on that. Why are you doing this? And it's not about the substance. It's about and not necessarily even the behavior. It's them trying to get, how can I fulfill this void very quickly to feel something? But the problem with that, trying to fill a void that fast, if you fill it that fast, it's fleeting and soon lost.
Right.
Very temporary.
There's a reel that is going viral right now. It's by a guy by the name of Rabbi Shais, Shais Taub, Taub. Have you seen this guy?
Is this the guy that says he won't treat addiction or something? Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I forget exactly what it's about.
I agree with what he says, but the premise behind it is what he says is that alcoholism and addiction is but symptoms, right? And we've talked about that ad nauseum on the podcast. It's all the underlying issues that fuel drug addiction and alcoholism. So, when people, I guess to answer her question or put my spin on it, it's the same as yours, but why people switch addictions from one thing to another, it's because they haven't tackled the underlying issues at bay, or that are there. And that's why, when people try and go into treatment for detox only, or even do just 30 days of treatment, 99% of the time it doesn't work, because you can't uncover, you can't even figure out what those issues are, let alone unpack them in 30 days, right? That's not to say it's not possible. There's obviously people out there that don't even go to treatment, that stumble their way into an AA meeting or an NA meeting, that get sober. They're at a place in their life to where that worked for them. But that's why people switch, because like you said, you take the heroin away. If I haven't figured out what those underlying issues are, trauma, abandonment, who knows, like you're going to switch it to something else. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be drugs and alcohol. It could be food, shopping, sex, pornography.
I'll get vulnerable and open up on one that's related to this very much so. So a few episodes back, the one that we did with Danny, we announced that I'm been single for the last 6 months.
Oh yeah, realrecoverytalk.com/Ben single to apply. I'm just kidding. That's not a real page.
Funny, Tom. But anyway, where I'm going with this is that you got to learn to sit with yourself. So I've had a major life changes, which anybody in active addiction, you run off to rehab, all of a sudden you don't have your drugs, there's major life changes. I've been in a situation for over, let's say the last 14 years, because my son's 14, where I'm constantly with my kids. I have two. I have Weston and Kai, 14 and 6. It's loud. They're running around. It's obnoxious. I'm always on the go. And even in sobriety right now, like the last 6 months, I'm in this spot where on occasion, I don't have them. And I go from running around all day, over the weekend, football, the park, the science museum, taking Weston to see Venom at the movies. It's like, go, go, go. Kai being just a madman crazy. And then all of a sudden it's quiet because they're not with me. The old me that's sitting there like, and all of a sudden, like I had all this stimulation. And now like, whoa, it's quiet. I feel kind of lonely. The old me would be like, where can I go? Go to the bar. There's people at the bar. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to learn to sit with yourself. And that goes to her question, like, why is it these people are turning to something different to fill the void? Because they haven't learned to sit with themselves. Sit in that, when uncomfortable becomes comfortable, it's good.
Yeah.
Now you have to have healthy coping mechanisms. You talk about it on your reels all the time. Find something to replace, find something to do. And I've been doing a pretty good job lately of that, Tom. I'm pretty kind of proud of myself.
Your reels have definitely improved.
Oh, my reels have?
Oh, what were you talking about?
Oh, I was just talking about like me getting out and about and doing random stuff by myself now.
Oh yeah, you were at the park down in Boca yesterday.
Yeah. Well, that was with the kids.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like just for me, like been going out to dinners with random people that I meet at meetings and just.
Any females?
Yes. Not on dates. I have not been on a single date this entire time.
So just dinner with a female?
No, multiple females.
Oh, multiple.
It's like
savagery.
No, dude. All right, let's change the subject now.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but you gotta learn to sit with yourself.
Yeah.
And any major life changes, my stimulation got taken away, and all of a sudden I'm sitting quiet by myself, and I haven't had that in over a decade.
Yeah.
What do I do with myself?
Well, and that's the first part of our question. Why do people relapse in treatment? That's a big reason why, because the treatment process is very uncomfortable. And if you don't have drugs and alcohol to turn to, sometimes people say, fuck it, and just leave, and they will go and relapse because they can't deal with going through that process. That doesn't happen with us, fortunately, very often. It has happened to where, somebody's here today, gone tomorrow.
What's this statistic? Isn't it something like 15%
of what?
Of the US is alcoholic?
I don't know.
I'd have to look it up, but in my mind, like for instance, with the example that I was using, normal people would be able to go out to the bar.
Yeah.
And have drinks. And it's social. And there's going to be adults there that you can socialize with. And, here, alcoholics and drug addicts don't have that option. We have to work really hard at trying to figure out what to do with our time.
It's interesting, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I want to wrap up, but I went to dinner this weekend, me and Amanda and the kids, and there was a table that was not far from us, and I kept watching this guy, and he was drinking O'Doul's. I'm not kidding you. I bet you he had 6, maybe 8 O'Doul's in the time span that we were there for dinner. And this goes exactly to my point of what I'm saying. It's not about the fact that it's NA beer. It's the behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like soda, but I like diet soda as a disclaimer, but I won't drink 6 to 8 of them. I will drink what? What are you laughing at?
Joe and Charlie do the same analogy, and with his like country voice, he's like, "Now I like me some ice cold spring water fresh out the stream, but you don't see me sitting down and drinking a case of ice water."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, this goes to my point.
Thing, yeah.
This dude was sucking down O'Doul's like they were Budweisers.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's this guy going to do on a bad day? Or maybe they don't carry O'Doul's. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me.
One other thing I wanted to say that it hit me and now I can't remember, man. Oh, maybe it'll come to me.
All right. Well, last thing, I wanted to give a shout out to our friend Bridget. This post on the Facebook group, the Sobriety Network Facebook group, you need to go there. What advice would you give someone who is new to supporting a loved one in recovery? So if you're a wife or a spouse, if your spouse is going into recovery treatment or whatever, or a child, son or daughter, whatever, anybody in your life, if they're new on this journey of sobriety, what advice would you give someone? And she said, love them from afar, detach with love. Also listen to Real Recovery Talk podcast as much as possible.
The thing about Bridget, she's been on the podcast.
She has been on. She was on here. It's been a couple of years anyway. No, it's been about a year.
Yeah, probably like a year. I lose track of time, man. Time flies as we get old. My beard's getting gray. But where I was going with this is that is a woman with some real experience. Her son, literally, she called you that night. You go back and listen to her episode, but she called you while she was at her son's side in a hospital bed while he was in a coma, right? Yeah, coma.
Yeah. And he was in the ICU.
Didn't know if he was coming out of it. So when you have a woman like that who has experience like that saying to detach with love, it's worth taking a listen to because she's been on that battlefield and in those trenches.
If you want to listen to that episode, it's episode 338. It's on YouTube as well.
That's a powerful one.
I would encourage you to go to YouTube. And we actually recorded with her son, the one that was in ICU. It was I'll never forget it. I woke up at like 7 a.m. to her text message saying that Tristan had overdosed and he's in the ICU. We don't know if he's going to make it, yada, yada, yada. And we had been corresponding for 6 months prior to this. And the thing is that I kind of told her this was how this was going to play out, And she even says, and she's open about it, like I pissed her off. Like she was angry with me that like, not how dare I say this, but like, you know, I think she genuinely felt like he would be able to do this. And it ended up shaking out the way that I said it was going to. But man, she's awesome. Tristan's awesome. He's coming up on 2 years, ain't he?
I lose track of time, but I was going to mention he's got multiple years coming up on.
It's in January or April, January or April.
And the other parts of that, you know, he's now working in treatment.
Yep.
And he is on fire.
Yeah, he's sponsoring guys.
Yeah.
You know, he was just playing basketball yesterday.
And he's super young.
Yeah, he's only 21 now.
Yeah, dude.
He's got to be 21 or 22. So, all right. Well, that was fun, Ben.
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. We were kind of like all over the place and still got some stuff across.
Landed the plane. I think we're going to do this more. I like the readings out of the big book. And this was a suggestion to show some love to our friend Adam over at Mind Pump.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're taking after him, or we're doing what he said.
We take suggestions.
Yeah. So shout out to Adam from Mind Pump. And we haven't talked about Mind Pump in a long time. Go to Mind Pump if you want a really good podcast about fitness, nutritional things, you know, life. They talk about some really cool stuff.
You know what it is? They're good, genuine people.
Yeah. Yeah.
They literally grew up in the personal training space. I think Adam was running a gym by the time he was 20 years old as a general manager or something.
They were all managers. Yeah. Sal and Adam, were definitely managing gyms. Justin, I'm not quite sure. I think he was heavily involved in like athletics.
Yeah. But now they're what, like 45 somewhere. So 25 years in the space, at least maybe 30 years in their space.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of the same premise by which we have here is like, put your clients first. Always do what's in the best interest of your clients constantly. And that's been their model. Like it's, I think we were talking to Dom about this, how personal training, working in fitness or anything where you're helping somebody improve their lifestyle in some way, shape or form is a form of service work. There's a lot of parallels there.
All right. A couple of pieces of homework. Also, I want you to go to realrecoverytalk.com/guides if you want to see whatever guides that we've put together, myself, Ben, and Tambini. Those are at realrecoverytalk.com/guides. And also on the homepage, you can schedule a call with us. That's going to be a free 10, 15-minute call. We can go over your situation, see if we can help you in any way. Or if you would like, you can schedule a full 1-hour call with us. And you do that under the services tab on our website at realrecoverytalk.com. Ben, is that it?
I believe that's it, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Real Recovery Talk. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.